In this session, I want to go through 5 really useful, but I'd argue fairly lesser known built-in modules. Of course, because they're built-in, no need to do any pip installs or anything like that. These come shipped straight with Python. And the first one I want to take a look at is one called the textwrap module. So say, for example, you have a string that is like this. It's quite long, there may be commas, etc. I've gone for one that is fairly short. I often have to work with strings bigger than this. One headache we sometimes face in Python is how to take a big string and kind of show it in a nice, cool formatted way. You can use things like line breaks, you can use tabs, carriage returns, etc. One way of making that a whole lot simpler is just by using this module here and not kind of worrying about line breaking at certain bits. So the first 2 functions we're going to look at is the wrap and fill functions. Main difference is that this gives you a list, this one gives you a string. So let's start with the top one. So this is called textwrap.wrap, so the wrap function from the textwrap module. And if I just run this with an argument of width equals 10, check out what I get. I get a list of strings, and each one effectively has that maximum length. So maybe if I now change 10 to 20, hit run again, yeah, kind of as you'd expect really. It goes through this, and effectively once it hits like the limit of 20 for a word, that then becomes an item in the list. We carry on until the very end, and then you're good to go. There are more things you can put in here, but just for a basic point of view, I think this actually suits kind of most cases. Let me show you this one as well. So this is filled text. So if I just do a quick line break here, just to purely kind of separate them really, make some space in the terminal. Now the first one gave us a list, there we go, you can see all the items here. So this one might be useful for, suppose if you want to kind of generate this and maybe iterate over it or turn it into some kind of generator, etc. So they're purely kind of use case specific, but arguably I think this one's probably the one that's most commonly used. So similar deal, so let's give this the same width argument. So if I say width is 20 for both, and yeah, it goes through it. As soon as we hit kind of a level of 20 where, we have full words, we get a new line. That's it, we keep on going. So this is basically taking this entire string, just making it look super fancy. Now the next 2 I want to look at are all about indenting text and then doing the opposite, de-indenting if that's a word. So let's take a look at the indentation one first. There we go, we get this here. So what this does is effectively kind of just adds this to the start. So if I did maybe a couple, let's do that. There we go, looks good. We could even take the text from earlier. So if I did let's take the filled text one, replace sample text with filled text, and then hit run. There you go. So note that the previous one had 40, okay, so we're going to be getting, in this case, 2 lines of a max of 40 characters. This guy here is saying, basically, for each of those lines, go ahead and kind of start each line with this. So basically, we're starting each line with 3 individual tab spaces. And then our de-indentation one, it's effectively reversing this here. So if I make a bit of space, let's run both of those together. And there we go. So that's our original, which has been caused by this indentation one here. We're then passing the contents of this to my textwrap.dedent function, which is kind of a cool sounding name, right? Printing that off here, and then this is the result from that second print statement there. And the last one we've got, which I think is really cool actually, they've done quite a good job with this one, is this shortened text one. So imagine you're in a situation where you have a string, or maybe you're looking for a string to display on some kind of user input. Quite often what we do, you might be like, okay, this UI can display this text, but if it's too long, shorten it and stick some dots on the end, or stick like to be continued or et al, whatever. This just does that. So it's going to take in some sample text. In this case, it's going to be my guy at the top here, so this whole thing. And then what it'll basically do, it'll say once it gets longer than this, effectively stop, and just put this at the end. So let's go ahead, clear the screen, and run that again. And we get Python is a high level, comma, something like this, right? So, I don't know, you could do TBC, like to be continued. And there we go, Python is a high level something core. If you want to do some spaces there, make it look a bit nicer. And again, this is just kind of relative to your requirements, really. So maybe if your user interface had a maximum gap of like 50, yeah, you just go ahead and stick width as 50, and then this would then come along here. Suppose if it was like, let's try and make it too big. There we go. So in this case here, because this was underneath that 150, it's not going to care. It's going to carry on to say, yeah, go ahead and display the whole thing. But as soon as our string gets longer than this, then the shorten function kicks in. It's going to say, okay, you're longer than this. Go ahead, chop off the end, and then you're going to put this at the end instead. The next module I want to look at is difflib, or diff, short for difference, basically. And if you're familiar with Git, GitLab, GitHub, etc., you've probably been familiar with diffs in things like merge requests. Basically all it is, if you've never seen it before, imagine you've got this string here and this string here, but you want to know what's the difference between these two strings. Well, we can quite clearly see, yeah, this is different, names are different, places are different, but obviously for much bigger strings, it can be quite tricky to work out kind of what's different between the two. Difflib provides a nice utility to be able to do this. So what we do is we set it up by first invoking a differ object here. So if I just said diff is equal to, from difflib, define me a new differ object here. Now what we have to do is then call the compare method on this and pass it the things you then want to compare against. In this case, this and this here. So if I just did, in fact we can do diff again actually, that should be fine, is equal to diff.compare. And it's actually best, now when you're passing these things in here, let me just kind of open that up a second. See how it's got like sequence, kind of square brackets str? Ideally, it's good to give this as basically two lists containing your strings. So what you could do some text A like this, but then call split upon that list. Same again, do some text B, there we go, dot split. Then you should be good to go here. So you invoke the object, call compare, it then returns a generator. So if I just go ahead and print diff here, we should see something, I guess, nothing super exciting, but yeah, there's our generator. Now, in my view, the best way of doing this is to basically join the generator among a new line character like this. So if I did this, dot join together the diff. So basically the pluses are what's been added, the minuses are basically what's been taken out. So if I kind of go through this here, so the first minus is from this hello here, so it's saying, okay, this is gone, but hi has been added. My name is, they're the same in both, so no worries here. James is gone, but John has been added. Yeah, makes sense. And the and I live in, they're the same. England is gone, but Maine has been added. There we go. So it's a nice kind of simple way to see the difference amongst kind of a couple of different text sources, which is nice. So next time you've got a couple of big strings and you want to work out what's different, yeah, go ahead and use difflib. I think it only takes a couple of lines to set up. You could, make it short if you wanted to. So you could do something like this. Maybe let's do this here. Take that away. I guess it depends kind of how happy you are with it being kind of one big mega line. But yeah, you can do it that way as well if you want to, over a nice kind of simple, straightforward line. The next module to look at is the shutil module, and this reminds me a little bit of like a OS and pathlib kind of collaboration. It's really good for things like kind of moving files, copying directories, moving directories, deleting stuff, making archives. Really cool for kind of generic, almost boring kind of file moving and file admin stuff. So let's go through a couple of what I think are probably the most useful and probably most commonly used functions. The first one to look at is copy tree, and this basically takes a source directory and then a new directory of where to go, and it'll copy the directory with all the stuff inside it and just copy it into a new location. So here's my folders here. I've got my source directory, my two files. I've left this in on purpose, you'll see why in just a second, but let's run the code and see what happens. We get a backup directory, and there we go, there's the files. Now, this is set to false, like by default. So if I run this now, see how it errors out? It's erroring out because my backup directory already exists. So what you can do, kind of depending really on the application, if you make this as true here, then yeah, it'll go ahead and do it. So suppose, I don't know, maybe this file in the source changes. We hit run. That difference is now copied over to the backup, and it's not too fussed that we already have the backup directory. So this here, true or false, depending on kind of what your specific needs are. Now, getting a bit more specific, so this will just do an entire directory. This will kind of pick one specific file and then kind of rename it and move it. So if I take in my first argument, source directory file 1. So source directory file 1, it's going to be this guy here, and it's going to be moving this to the backup directory / renamed file 1. So currently backup directory, it's only got file 1 and file 2. Make sure I save and run this. Let's see what happens. And there we go. So see how it disappeared from here. So this one's nice and straightforward. If you need to move a file, name it as something else, you can use shutil.move. The next function is the make archive function, and I've given it 3 different things. This is what to call the compressed file. This is the format to compress it as, so it's going to be backup archive.zip, and this is what to compress. So my backup directory, that's going to be this guy here. It's got my 3 files. Let's go ahead and run. There we go, backup archive.zip. Yeah, obviously I can't see it in VS Code, but here it is. So this is useful if you want to take an entire directory of things, files, whatever. Choose what format to zip them as. In this case, just doing .zip is fine. Choosing what to call the zip file, and then just say, yeah, go ahead and do it to this directory. So obviously if we're creating zip files using shutil, shutil would be nice to then give us the ability to kind of go back in reverse, and it does. So using the unpack archive function, we can say, go to this zip file, in this case backup archive.zip, which exists here, that's fine. Then we can say for this directory, go ahead and take all the stuff out of this zip and stick it in here. So if we hit run, should see, it takes a second, yeah, extract it back up, and there's those original files here. So basically just using this line and this line, we can be making zip files. We can then say, okay, cool, now we have a zip file, go ahead, decompress it, extract all the stuff out, and then go and stick it in this directory here. Last one on the list is disk usage, and you can give it a path to go from. If I just do dot here, it's going to be my current directory. So I'm inside this guy where I've got my main.py files, I've got my various folders, etc. And then this returns an object which has some quite useful attributes. So in this case, I've done total, used, and free. So if I go ahead and run this, we get an output on the screen basically saying, what's my total usage? It's going to be this here. How much have I used? That's going to be this. And how much is free in this current directory. So yeah, pretty simple, straightforward way to see kind of the current state of the directory you're in. Or of course, you can give it a custom directory here, and it'll do the same thing for that directory. The next library on the list is the pickle module. This one's really interesting because what it effectively does is take some kind of object. In this case, I'm going to be using a dictionary. So if I hit run, I'll show you what I'm working with. I've got this guy down here, this dictionary. And what it basically does is take an object and convert it to bytes. Pickle then comes with methods to then take those bytes and then put them back into a normal Python object. And the reason you do this would be, say, suppose you want to take like a massive dictionary, maybe save it to some kind of file so you can then read it later, or perhaps you want to send it over email, send it over some kind of messaging protocol. It's quite nice to do it using bytes rather than trying to send like a text file or something like that. So basically, I'm going to take this dictionary, convert it into a pickle file. We could then use the deserialize to then say, okay, now I'll take that pickle file and I'll bring it back into a Python object. In my view, the best way of doing this is with a context manager. So if we say with open, let's just say my data.pk, normally it's convention to use pkl. Mode, it has to be in WB, so you want to be writing bytes. And we'll say open this as file. Then we use the pickle.dump. So we're going to be using dump from the pickle module. And then we can just do down here, pickle.dump. Okay, now we can see it's taking an object and a file. So I want to be doing, in this case, this people dictionary, you're going to be pickled. And it's going to go into file here. So hit run. There we go, my data.pickle. You'll try and read it. You can't, VS Code will let me do it. But then all we can do is say, okay, now we've given this, let's go back the other way. So if I remove this and remove this here, this time we're going to be opening the same file. WB goes to RB, so this time we're reading it as bytes. And then what we can do is basically use pickle.load. So if I do load here, just go ahead and load in the file like this. And in this case, let's just print it here. You could save it to a variable or do whatever you want here, but just for simplicity's sake, let's just print it. There we go, that's the same object. So just to recap, we can use a context manager. We can say open a file. We can then use pickle.dump to pickle some kind of object, save it to a file. This guy here can then say open said file. Open it is read bytes. And then, yeah, go ahead and print it or do whatever you want to it. So nice and simple and a very useful library to be built into Python. The final module to look at today is the zipfile module. Now I know that when we did shutil, we did some zipping, but this gives you a whole lot more flexibility. The first thing we'll do is take a look at just how to zip some files normally. So I've got this folder here called some files. This has 1, 2, 3 random sort of made up text files here. Now zipfile works best when kind of done like a context manager. So if we do with zipfile, then dot, there we go, let's do the capital one, zipfile like this here, then give it a name. So let's just call this my zipfile dot zip, then specify a mode. So this case mode is going to equal to, so equal to W like that, and then say we'll save it as file. Then what we can do inside the context is then choose the individual files to add to the zip file. So just pass in the name of the files I want to zip. So we'll do file.write. Let's see. Just got to take off this November bit here. So say, for example, I want to do text1.txt and text2.txt like this. Let's hit run. And we should get our results. There it is, my zipfile.zip in all of its glory. Now, one thing that's kind of cool, we can zip files like this. We can also append as well. So say, for example, I take this guy. Let's comment out our original one. Change the mode to A, short for append. Let's get rid of the second one. And then I'll do this guy here, this another file. So if I did another file.txt, hit run, and that's it. So we can create them from scratch using W mode, or we can say, okay, here's an existing archive, open it in append mode, and yeah, here's a file to then go and add to that archive. So nice and simple, fairly straightforward, but also pretty powerful as well. Now next up is how to unzip and go back the other way, and it's pretty straightforward, to be honest. In fact, what I could probably do is go ahead and just do this here, bring this down below. So of course we call this myzipfile.zip. We'll open it in read mode this time. And then underneath here we can do file.extractall. And suppose in this case it wants a path, it does. Let's say yours to go in test like this here. So if I hit run on test, there we go, there's test here. And we can see another file, txt1. These were blank to begin with, but that's okay, no bother. So it's pretty straightforward, and I think the idea of you using a context manager for like the writing, the appending, the reading, keeps it pretty straightforward, keeps it nice and clean. And one final thing to show, which I think is pretty powerful, is we can list the contents of a zip file without actually unzipping it. So for this one, I can just come down here and say print file dot, let's see, name list, and this is a method, we need to call this one. There we go. So you can see which files are inside the current archive, so txt1, txt2, and another file. So these two would have been added during this stage here. The another file.txt would have been added at this point here. And then here we could say, okay, tell me what's inside it without bothering to actually unzip it in the first place. So guys, I hope that was helpful to see. Those are, in my view, 5 sort of lesser used, but pretty handy and pretty useful libraries. If you've got some of your own which you think are worth noting, feel free to ping us a comment, and I'd love to hear what you guys think. Cheers.